This is a Fox News alert. President Trump has unveiled his strategy for national security, one that enshrines his America First campaign approach into U.S. policy. In an address at the Ronald Reagan Building in Washington, the president outlined a plan that includes defeating ISIS, protecting the U.S. from North Korea, and securing our borders, among other topics. The president also spoke about leaving a greater America to our children and our grandchildren. Watch.
On top of everything else, our leaders drifted from American principles. They lost sight of America's destiny, and they lost their belief in American greatness. On January 20th, 2017, I stood on the steps of the Capitol to herald the day the people became the rulers of their nation again. American success is not a foregone conclusion. It must be earned, and it must be won. Together, we will leave our children and our grandchildren a nation that is stronger, better, freer, prouder, and yes, an America that is greater than ever before.
Okay, Greg, I know what you're going to say, so I can't call on you right now. Dana?
Well, a national security strategy is something that is congressionally mandated, but presidents can wait a couple, 3 years even before they do something. And I think that any president that puts out a plan, like that's the plan until breaking news changes everything, which is, you never know what's going to pop up in the world, and every problem in the world ends up on the president's desk. There's two things that I really liked about it, and in particular, you're going to see a push about this next year, and we need to talk about it more, which is military readiness. And the state of our military, the repairs that are needed for our planes, the new planes that are needed, the new equipment, and also all of the cybersecurity issues that we're dealing with. The president touched on that a little bit, and I think you'll see a push in the new year, especially when it comes to funding. The other thing that I liked hearing him say was that as a force for good throughout its history, America will use its influence to advance our interests and benefit humanity. And I think that really does keep us separate from other countries in the world, that we are exceptional for a reason, and that really is the main reason.
All right, so you liked it. I mean, definitely themes you thought about American exceptionalism.
I mean, a lot of it made sense to me, like protecting the homeland.
Sure.
I get it. American prosperity, if America is doing better economically, that means that you have more money in the world and more influence, and more money to pay for military readiness in order to protect the country. And also the economic freedom is a part of that. Preserve peace through strength and advance American influence. I mean, if you were just reading it that way, you could say any president of the past, 200 years could have had similar things.
Sounds like Reagan a bit, though.
When he talks about it you heard, like, sort of the first half of the speech was really going through the list of accomplishments that he thinks he's had over this past year, and then he got to the strategy. So it all fitted together at the end. But for me, the two things that stood out the most was military readiness, which we know we have a huge problem with, and that has to get fixed. And the second piece being this saying that we will continue to be a force for good in the world, which the world needs.
Which most definitely. Okay, Greg, you heard some different things as well in there.
No, I heard kind of the same things. I mean, I guess I'm always tired of hearing it. It's always about the children.
Right.
But I'm okay with that. This is the central piece of his agenda. I called it the stool of security. So it's a table with 3 legs. One of them is national security, dealing with our enemies and adversaries like ISIS and North Korea. Then you have domestic security, which is basically reinvigorating the way the country feels and appreciates law enforcement, because we saw them disrespected for so long. And then the third is the border, which is linked to the above. The border becomes more valuable in terms of national security when you have terrorism and you have technology. So that's an important thing. Those are the 3 legs on this stool. But the big point here is, somewhere along the line, as government grew, we lost the plot. What is government for, primarily? This. Without this stool of security, you don't have freedom or prosperity. Security and strength guarantees freedom and prosperity. Then the last thing politically is that if you don't like Trump, or like you just couldn't get in, you just couldn't accept him, this is the kind of agenda that makes you overlook the small stuff that bugs you. You know what I mean? I've said this before. If somebody is right on the big picture, you can forgive or overlook the smaller, more embarrassing Polaroids. So what if he tweets and there's always this kind of underlying chaos and conflict? If somebody is right on the big picture, it doesn't matter. And when we look back, we will realize that it didn't matter. No one will remember a lot of this stuff, but we will remember the strong military and enhanced security and no terrorism.
All right, well, great points, because immigration and border protection are also key components of President Trump's new national security strategy. Watch this.
Leaders in Washington imposed on the country an immigration policy that Americans never voted for, never asked for, and never approved. A policy where the wrong people are allowed into our country and the right people are rejected. American citizens, as usual, have been left to bear the cost and to pick up the tab. A nation without borders is not a nation.
Okay, Jesse, a reaction to this.
I think he was trying to strike a very clean break from past administrations by saying he's here to ignite a reawakening in American confidence and usher in a rebirth of pride and patriotism and prosperity by putting America first and putting the people above the powerful. And American greatness has to be guarded vigilantly because our destiny is not assured. And he tried to inspire all the American people to be competitive in a new competitive world and pointed out China and Russia as other great nations that are trying to seize what we have. And then he pointed to all the litany of failures from past administrations. Taxpayers bailing out other alliances, jobs being fleeced by overseas out of countries, spending a lot of blood and treasure on wars where we tie. And he went along that list, but then, like Greg said, pointed out to the 4 pillars. Protect the homeland. And you just heard him. Border security, and that's the wall. That's reinforcing our great Border Patrol agents, and that's getting rid of things like chain migration and the visa lottery. Also defeating ISIS and make sure they can't come over here, but then promoting peace and prosperity, and that's through cutting taxes and cutting regulation and not signing bad trade deals where workers get hosed and big companies make out great. And then preserving peace through strength, talking about a huge reinvestment in our military, but also focusing on modern threats like missile defense and cyber. And then at the end, he kind of tweaked President Obama. He's trying to focus on realism, not idealism, where we're not going to try to impose our way of life on other people, and we're not going to lead from behind. Instead, we're going to champion our values, and I think he believes that that's the best opportunity for us to maintain our #1 posture.
You love being #1, Jesse. Okay, so Juan, did you hear this through the same prism that Jesse did?
Not at all.
Right.
I mean, I certainly agree with Jesse that he was playing against, grievance politics, going at all the presidents who came before, when in fact this, I think somebody else on the panel, maybe you, Dana, said it could have been any other president. This is basically in keeping with our national security framework.
Yeah, she said
but
that.
Where it differs, and to me, he identified it, so you got to give him credit for that, is that China and Russia are exerting increasing evidence that they want to increase their profile in the world, globally. So, to me, if you look at Asia, where we backed out of the Asian trade deal, I see China stepping up, and it's not only stepping up in terms of economics, but militarily. Similarly, Russia in the Middle East, given what happened in Syria, but also with Iran, you see Russia playing a bigger role. So Trump identifies that, but he then doesn't say exactly how we will respond. To the contrary, he says, we're going to be more focused on our interest and our security, etc. Well, of course, he's going to focus on our security. But I don't see that we are taking the necessary steps to fight back against Russia and China's growing influence in the world. I was out at that Reagan Library the other day for the National Defense Forum, and this is what the defense experts are saying, is that, there's a lot of talk from Trump, a lot of rhetoric, but no action in terms of saying, here's what our Middle East policy was going to be.
But he is reprioritizing. The #1 threat isn't Russia. The #1 threat isn't China. It's existential terror. That's the ball that he sees. These other things are behind that ball, and he will deal with them. And maybe they can help. Maybe Russia can help with terror. That's what he's looking. When you look at that, when you look at it from that angle, that's what happens.
I don't agree with you. By the way, there was an interesting phone call over the weekend between Trump and Putin, where Putin thanks apparently Trump for intelligence that thwarted an attack that would have taken place in St. Petersburg. But I don't think that terror is the #1 issue here. If you're
be.
talking about
Well,
our
he could
national
address
security
this.
structure,
Right.
I think you are talking about the possibility that terror would be generated in a place like the Middle East,
And let's listen to him on
especially
this.
after what he did with
Okay.
Jerusalem.
Well, President Trump also addressed a
Wait.
major strategic goal of the U.S., which was destroying ISIS.
Wait.
We have dealt ISIS one devastating defeat after another. The coalition to defeat ISIS has now recaptured almost 100% of the land once held by these terrorists in Iraq and in Syria. Great job. We're now chasing them wherever they flee, and we will not let them into the United States.
Okay, so focus there on national security, obviously on borders, a strong immigration policy, peace through strength. Dana, I echo some of the comments you made earlier about former presidents, past presidents really focusing on this kind of Reagan-esque theme, and then here using a specific example, topic sentence, ISIS.
Right. Well, I do think that the technology has advanced so much in 16 years. And one of the things that you can do is shrink ISIS's territory.
Okay.
You can even prevent them from getting in here. But we have shown, just in the last month, that we continue to have a problem with online radicalization. So ISIS is able still to put videos up online to try to figure out a way to get to people. And the president is saying, okay, well, the first thing we have to do as a part of America First is figure out a way to use the tools that we have in order to prevent that from happening. He doesn't spell it all out in here, and you can't in a national security document. A lot of this stuff has to be classified. But I do think that he will have to have quite a strong push, and probably you'll see it in the State of the Union, that military readiness, which includes dealing with possibilities of biological terror, online terror attacks, like cyber attacks. And then you had somebody like China, just to pull this all together, as what Juan was talking about. This morning, China released a huge plan for its government to be the #1 artificial intelligence creator and technology developer in the world.
So they've been listening
So they
to
are
Greg.
like way ahead in terms of that type of planning, and we don't want to be playing second fiddle to that. So there's a lot that's going to happen, and I think this next year is how you set the stage for how are you going to provide the resources to our military and intelligence forces in order to do that.
Military readiness,
And
technology.
Those resources, $700 billion investment.
Wow.
That's a historic investment in the U.S. military. And to Juan's point, I mean, he's ripped up the rules of engagement, which allowed us to destroy the caliphate over there. No artificial timelines in Afghanistan. The Iran Revolutionary Guard is now labeled as a terrorist organization. That bad deal is also in the crosshairs. And the North Korea situation, major sanctions slapped on them. So to say that the president isn't really doing anything or hasn't really spelled out how he's doing it, one, you want to remain unpredictable, but two, I think there's a lot of leather out there.
You know, I watched, I can't remember what Sunday show yesterday. It was pretty funny. They were interviewing some dude, some expert, and he was talking about how Trump had a bad year. Trump had a bad year, except for ISIS. Except for ISIS, economy's doing pretty good, and he may get attacked, the judges. But he had a really bad year. And then another guy says, yeah, except for ISIS. It's like, if all he did was ISIS, that's a pretty damn great year.
Enough? Yeah.
And by the way, you know, I mean, we had other news today about, and I don't know how true it is, but you know, what a difference from Obama, who gave a pass to Hezbollah. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's something that maybe we should look into.
I think you guys should pick up a copy of a newspaper, and in it would say, oh my gosh, look, President Bush, President Obama, all of these people were fighting terror all along.
Badly,
oh my gosh.
President Obama's
I think Obama was colluding with Hezbollah and Iran
You
in
know,
order to
that's
save
just so
that
offensive.
deal.
Oh my
That's so offensive.
That's what Politico said in that newspaper you said I had to read.
That's what you say. I mean, and that's just, you know, more
I know it
Trump
was a long
rhetoric,
See what happened?
empty. Go ahead.
What's it in Politico?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So it wasn't crazy.
It was crazy.
No.
But you like Politico.
And Brett
Yeah, I
Barron
do.
is going to have a big thing on it tonight, that very story.
So there you
Sure.
go. That's
Long tease.
That's deep tease. Coming up, President Trump says he's not happy with the way the Mueller investigation is being handled. You're going to hear his plans on dealing with the special counsel next.
If you could find a dry way out forever, be still. But you can't. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
It's a big week on Capitol Hill as key players in the FBI and Justice Department are testifying before lawmakers. Sources tell Fox News Bruce Orr, who the DOJ recently demoted, is being questioned today in a closed-door hearing about Fusion GPS. And tomorrow, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe is set to appear before the House Intelligence Committee. This weekend, President Trump doubled down on saying there is no collusion with Russia.
Not looking good. It's not looking good. It's quite sad to see that. So my people were very upset about it. I can't imagine there's anything on them, frankly, because, as we said, there's no collusion. There's no collusion whatsoever. But a lot of lawyers thought that was pretty sad. No, I'm not.
All right, so let's start with the Mueller firing. In the beginning of the weekend, it was he's going to fire Robert Mueller, and at the end, he wasn't. I mean, what was that all about?
You know what's great was on Twitter, all these celebrities were like threatening to take to the streets, blamed on a rumor that they probably started. They're going, oh my God, he's going to fire Mueller. Let's go to the streets. Who told you that? Well, the other guy on Twitter told me that. This is a real boring version of the Hatfield and the McCoys.
Oh my God.
The media and the Democrats were the Hatfields. They just never expected the McCoys to show up. It's always been a one-sided fight. So now...
The McCoys are the MAGA.
Yeah, exactly. So now they have like, okay, you got collusion, we yell corruption, you yell Russia, we yell deep state. It's a lot of energy. It's like a game of tic-tac-toe that always ends in cat. Remember that you always write cat? It's like, but it allows two sides to dig in, and I really do think this cancels each other out. They both sides just kind of go like that. It's a push.
And the first question he was asked by reporters when he was wearing that amazing USA hat, Kimberly, was about all of these Trump transition emails that were seized by Robert Mueller's investigators. People say, you know what, that was an overly aggressive move by the investigators. And then Mueller's team said, hey, this is fair game. What do you think?
Well, but I think it depends on what side of it you come down on to say, okay, wait, this looked like tremendous overreach in terms of a big document and information grab to get a swath of information about pre-campaign and during the campaign and transition officials. I mean, even had Don Jr. going and testifying. Then you saw leaks right after that coming out by Schiff. The whole thing to me is just, it's not coming off very good at all because it just seems like there's a specific intended purpose to undermine, the president. We're going to see what Mueller has to say. I don't think he's going to remove him whatsoever. Why? If there's nothing to hide, there is no collusion. Everyone's cooperated and testified. You're getting to the bottom of what was going on in this investigation and the unclean hands that are there. So let the truth come out to silence it once and for all that they didn't do anything wrong.
And the president's lawyers, Dana, say that they expect this investigation to be wrapping up fairly soon.
I'm sure they hope so, and I think I hope so.
I think we all hope
this
so.
all done.
No, don't say
Except
that.
one. Yeah.
I do think, though, that if the Trump lawyers hadn't been surprised that these documents were obtained, then they would have actually been in a better position. I am surprised that they were surprised. When you work at a transition office and you are given a .gov email, when you get the email, you agree that all of those emails are subject to being able to search at any point. So it's like an employer here can come on and look at your Fox News account.
No, they can't.
That's just, well.
I hope not.
Big trouble, Jesse.
Were taken inappropriately, that they would go to the judge, not to Congress and to the court of public opinion to try to undermine it.
And this seems to be a campaign in the court of public opinion, Juan, of trying to work the refs, as they do in sports, where you criticize and criticize, and hopefully it can have an effect.
Well, I don't think there's any question. I think that's what it's a whole propaganda campaign against Robert Mueller, against the Justice Department, against the FBI, even as you have Trump officials like Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, like Christopher Wray, the FBI Director, saying, no, these people are doing a good job. They're patriots, and they're working hard to protect America. But just what we heard last week as the president was leaving was, he said, well, no collusion. And he talks about himself, but he doesn't talk about all the aides that were involved in the campaign. And that's why I think a lot of people were, Greg, thinking, oh, something is being set up here that would allow him to justify going after Robert Mueller. But I think now we even have a spat between Fox and Friends and Hannity.
Don't say that.
It's true.
Don't say that. Not right around the holidays.
Yes, I know.
Well, it seems like the more and more Democrats investigate this president, the more crimes they find that they committed.
Very good.
Yeah, coming up.
Talk about
chaos just days before Christmas. Thousands of flights grounded. How will you be impacted? Next.
The vibrations, I don't need nothing.
Fox News Alert, we are monitoring developments in the major train derailment in Washington state that's left multiple people dead and injured. The Amtrak train jumped the tracks and part of it crashed down onto a highway. Dan Springer is on the scene with the latest. Dan.
Yeah, and Dana, that death toll stands at 6, according to the Associated Press. A National Transportation Safety Board GO team is en route to Washington State from Washington, D.C., and we expect them to be here this afternoon and fully here by this evening. And if I step out of the way, you can see that we now have a lot of large equipment, Caterpillars and other equipment, that will eventually be used to take those train cars off of Interstate 5 here in DuPont, Washington, which is about 50 miles south of Seattle. Several of the cars jumped the tracks and fell onto vehicles that were southbound on I-5, killing 6 people. All of those who were killed were in the train. Nobody on the ground, nobody in cars below were killed, but 77 people were taken to local hospitals. They have obviously various degree of injuries. This was an inaugural trip for this Amtrak train, which connects Seattle to Portland. It was meant to be a high-speed train that would shave 15 minutes off of the travel between those two cities. It's a more direct route, but it also has a sharper curve here. So when NTSB investigators get onto the scene, they will obviously be looking at the speed at which that train was traveling. There's also been an unconfirmed report of an obstruction on the track. Again, all the things that the NTSB investigators will be looking at when they get here. In the meantime, we have a lot of equipment assembled here. The goal, once the investigators get here, is to clean up this scene and get this interstate reopened as quickly as possible. This is a major artery that goes all the way from Canada to Mexico. 60,000 vehicles pass through here southbound each day, so they want to get this opened up as quickly as possible. Dana?
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Meanwhile, on another story we're following, power is finally restored at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport after plunging into darkness yesterday, grounding over 1,000 flights and causing a holiday travel nightmare across the country. Officials say a fire in an underground electrical facility is responsible for bringing the world's largest airport to a standstill. So, Kimberly, did you see this yesterday? The power goes out at 1 p.m. It's not restored fully until midnight. So everybody's trapped.
Yes, and I saw the pictures of everybody at the airport, and they're like in darkness and just like piled up on like luggage. You couldn't tell the difference between Samsonite, Toomey, and humans. It was very interesting to me. But, you know, it really sucks during the holidays when you have this kind of like, you know, disaster happen when you're trying to get to see loved ones and then get rerouted and like, what are you going to do? And what about your hotel? And are they going to
finish out your last week of work before the holiday?
The whole thing. And so it's very challenging, especially, I mean, Atlanta is a hugely busy airport. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of international flights and traffic coming in and out of there. So, I mean, just think about it. It's like the equivalent of something happening.
Well, even though apparently, well, they don't know what happened, Greg. They don't think it was anything, nobody
cyber terror
messed with it or cyber terror. But I did think that it shows just how easily disrupted our lives are with power.
It could be artificial intelligence pretending it's an accident, already self-aware, are doing these little tests. This actually is, like you said, it's a nice little dry run on how an attack on our grid might look and feel, except if you enlarge it to entire states and extend the duration indifferently, because you don't need to invade a country if you just have the humans within the country turn on themselves, which, I mean, if that went on another day, you know, people would be eating each other, Dana. No, it's like they would open up give out free food. The one thing, though, is like, this is why, like, I always do carry on, and I always have booze and a book and an iPod.
and pills.
If stuff goes bad, I just leave. I just go, you know what?
That's amazing, because I think I would have left, too. Because, one, I know a lot of people couldn't necessarily get out of the airport. They didn't have anywhere to go. But if you had an option, would you have left? Everybody looked very calm.
And no chargers.
No chargers.
You know, it wasn't you know, pitch black. It was that they didn't have power. They had emergency generators. But the problem was, especially I relate to this with some intensity, that if you flew in during this period, they were told that you can't get to the gate.
Yeah, you can't get off the airport.
You can't operate all the stuff that's necessary for you to get off the plane. So they had people just sitting on the plane for hours.
Oh, God.
Imagine
that bathroom.
It's just terrible.
I know the bathroom thing. I was thinking about
forget about it.
Jesse, did you know that Chick-fil-A is usually closed on Sundays? They opened and they delivered food to stranded passengers after Atlanta's mayor called for assistance around 10 p.m. So they opened up and got the job done.
I would have just pretended I was stranded just to get free Chick-fil-A. Here are my travel tips.
We've done worse.
Okay.
Travel insurance, buy it. There's a little box you can check whenever you buy a flight or a
not that
hotel.
expensive.
It's only like $10 or $15 or $20. It always
recommend
works. Yeah. Greg and I were talking about Clear.
Yeah.
Clear is like TSA pre-check on steroids. You don't have to do anything except put your irises on a little thing. It's like James Bond.
But isn't that just
and
like
you go
Washington?
right to the front.
Like DC has
No, they've
it?
expanded
A
it
lot
into
more
other
now?
hubs. And then the Delta Lounge, I know it's pricey, but you don't have to hang out with everybody else. And you can just eat all that free food and drink
Elitist.
free booze.
The rabble. You don't want to be near the rabble, Jesse.
By the way, now
rabble
everyone's
loves
gonna
us.
go.
And lastly, the whole thing that your parents tell you when you go for a flight.
Fresh underwear?
Get there 3 hours before an international.
Yeah.
2 hours before domestic. No. 1 hour before domestic. 1.5 before international. Stop clogging the place up.
I agree with
Right?
that. If they're clogging it up, that is the problem.
They're clogging it up, but I have to strongly second the Delta Lounge. Wow.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh, well, aren't we special?
People go there
I
to,
have to, I
kinda
have to
meet people.
second the
Yeah,
fresh
let's go
pair of
there to meet
underwear.
You know that?
Wherever you go.
Absolutely,
Unbelievable.
at all times. All right, well, we're glad the power is back on. When we return, this Saturday Night Live comedian is serious about showing his permanent love for Hillary Clinton. Greg will explain.
Where the sky can't rain on me anymore. Don't knock on my door 'cause I won't come. I'm hiding from the storm.
Time for. Great music, eh? Welcome to It's Just Too Easy. It's when we do a story that's just too easy to ridicule, making it too hard to ignore. So in this episode, Pete Davidson, he's the nice kid from Saturday Night Live. He just got a tattoo of Hillary on his arm. When his friends asked him why, he said it was because Hillary was a badass. So now he has something in common with Hillary. They both have an ass on their arm. Hers was named Bill. See, it's just too easy.
Oh, my God.
Now, I could say that this is the funniest thing Peter has ever done, but that's just too easy. I could say this is the funniest thing to come out of SNL this year, but that's just too easy. I could just laugh hysterically at this completely inaccurate likeness of Hillary, but that's just too easy. So maybe it's better to ask, why would you get a tattoo of Hillary when there's so many other more preferable options? Like a gorgeous dolphin, look at that. Or maybe a delightful unicorn, that is so special. Or why not just me? Yes, look at that, it's beautiful. Everyone should have me on their body, tattoo-wise.
Uh-oh, someone might.
Anyway, Pete, we get it, you care, you're morally superior, but woefully transparent in your appeasement. Tattoos like this illustrate that decisions based on feelings always end with something you really regret. Like choosing Hillary as your candidate because it felt great to nominate a woman. She lost. And yet tattoos are easier to disappear. I just wanted to do this story so we could talk about tattoos. I'm going to start with you, Dana.
Okay.
If you could get a tattoo on your body, what tattoo would it be?
I know.
Well, I think I'm not for tattoos.
Oh, no?
So this is pretend.
Yeah.
But I would go with my main man, Jasper.
I knew it.
There you go. So you actually had this done this morning. That's great. Did that hurt?
It's an arm.
Did that? I have a very hairy arm.
That's another reason I'm
Oh,
terrified
my
of the tattoo. Doesn't it hurt terribly?
Yeah, it does,
Yes.
but that's why you get drunk. You do tons of shots.
I can't do that
and
either.
a couple of pain pills. Everything's great, Kimberly.
Oh, that's every day for you.
Yeah, that's, well, anyway, we won't get into that here. Your tattoo, if you could.
First of all, I have no tattoos on my body. Mm-hmm. Like Dana, I don't do them. Not going to happen. However,
Yes,
to
if you-
play along
Yes.
or roll and road dog.
Oh, that's
hilarious.
See how good that looks?
What a cutie.
There you go. There you go.
See?
You know the guy that the
got a
model we used for
flyaway.
this has tattoos all over
Yes.
his body, and then we kicked him out of the building. And we said, yep, thanks a lot. Paid him $50.
not bad.
All
Not
right,
bad for a day's
Jesse.
And that would be on my shoulder. up
Shoulder.
above a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's good.
I just want to make that clear to anyone who might be freaked out. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Jesse, I'm dying to know what tattoo you get.
You know, I put a lot of thought into this, Greg.
Yes.
And I came up with Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Gorka.
I think he'd look great on any appendage. He's, he's something terrifying about him, but also really wholesome.
Yes.
He's like the most fascinating man. You know that commercial with the beer? I mean, he's just fascinating on many levels.
Interesting man in the world.
I think it would be a nice conversation piece.
Yeah.
Women would like it. Men would like it. I mean, what's not to like?
What if he gets arrested for some horrible crime?
Even
Then it's
better.
like having the Hillary tattoo. You regret it.
You regret it.
You
All
can
right.
change it to Hillary.
Juan, what is your tattoo?
Well, I don't think there's much doubt about it. If Pete's going to get Hillary, I got to do something, as a Fox News guy, what can I do?
Yeah.
I've got to get a triple.
yeah.
I'm going to do everybody better. There's Hannity, there's Laura Ingraham, and Janine Pirro.
That's amazing.
Yes, in fact, I really wanted the girls on either side of Hannity because I wanted like a propaganda special. That's what I wanted.
fair and balanced.
Yeah,
That
there you
is
go.
absolutely incredible.
I think it's actually quite attractive.
Did you like that one?
So I got a tattoo. This is actually on me. I got a tattoo of Tattoo from Fantasy Island, hanging out with the Russian pop star duo Tattoo. There they are all together, and they all have their hands up. Isn't that pleasant? You got
Very
a tattoo
cute.
and Tattoo
together.
together.
That was interesting.
It is interesting.
Congratulations to the guy who got all the tattoos.
Yes, I'd like to thank Sean O'Rourke for. Yeah, I gave him an unusual mission on Monday. Roger Stone has a tattoo of Nixon on his back.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't tell you how I found out, but it's interesting. No, but it's so.
It was called Your Saturday Night.
No, I watched. I watched some documentary. Yes, it was a documentary.
You see it in
in
a
America.
documentary, yeah.
Yes.
Big weekend plans. I'll go.
Yeah, you know it. All right. Up next, the real-life hunt for E.T. Glad they're going after that punk. New details about a $20 million top-secret military UFO program when we return.
Go.
Troy.
Oh my gosh, I guess we're not alone after all. A stunning new revelation. The Pentagon reportedly set up a secret program 10 years ago looking for UFOs deep in space. And newly released video captured by U.S. Navy pilots offers an inside look at this secretive government program. Take a look.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
My gosh is right. I mean, who would believe? So the thing is, we don't know if this is a UFO. It could be like somebody's aircraft that wasn't reported, but this really gives a lot of credence to people who've been saying, hey, the government was hiding something from us. You're not shaking your head.
No, because we already know there's nothing out there because a couple of reasons. One, we have had this incredible revolution with digital cameras and smartphones. And we spent all this time looking, as a child, looking at all these grainy photographs that we used to look at as kids and documentaries. Well, we don't get any more of that, and everybody has a phone, and we don't see anymore. The reason why there has been no contact is because they do not exist. And they don't exist because we don't exist. When we go out and we look at the lifeless orbs, these planets out there, that's what we look like to them because this is all a computer simulation that basically was created long ago. Those planets out there are already conquered and simulated, which is why there's only us.
Is he okay?
I just changed my mind. I think Greg is an alien. I think you're the alien.
Well,
I am a shape-shifting lizard.
okay. Well,
Now
anyway.
you're going to encourage people.
I was struck that, in fact, that 10 years, and they put $22 million into this, Dana. So do you think this is a waste, or does this justify what the government was doing?
In the scheme of things, for as much money as the government spends, I think that this is not money that was poorly spent. You do think that it was Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada, who got this money earmarked into the DIA budget, which is a secret budget for the intelligence agency of the Defense Department. But he had support from Senator Ted Stevens, who said, I think we ought to look into this. So,
Yeah, why? Because he got hit by a UFO.
no.
It was an unidentified flying object.
Oh, you mean Harry Reid?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I hurt his eye.
Yes, or the exercise equipment.
Wow.
So
I like
but
that
if you
joke.
listen to an interview this morning with on the Daily, the New York Times podcast, they interview the guy who just recently left his position, Elizondo, I think his name was.
Right.
And he says, he's not saying there's for sure something out there, but that it's definitely worth studying.
But, Jesse, there was the video. It's not like we don't know. I mean, now you're looking at something just like the pilot, and you're saying, what is that?
Yeah, I can't identify what that is, Juan. I have no idea. But I've gone to these UFO conventions back in the day and shot Waters Worlds, and people tell me stories about being abducted, and they honestly believe they were abducted and things were done to them while aboard the spacecraft, and a lot of the stories share similar details. So there has to be something going on. I don't think everybody's hallucinating.
No, they are. It's hypnagogic nightmares. Everybody, they're hypnagogic nightmares. When you're sleep paralysis and you think something's on top of you, that's a hypnagogic nightmare.
But I do think spending a lot of money on stuff like this has other benefits.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously when the military-industrial complex spends this amount of money on things, you know, isn't that how they created the internet? Not Al Gore.
Well, that's true.
You never
that's
know
how
what you
they
might
connect.
discover.
That's what you just said is absolutely true. But Kimberly, I'm accustomed to sort of mocking these people as tinfoil hat brigade, I think they call them, or people who are just making, you know, if you ever listen to Art Bell in the middle of the night, you know, on the radio, all these things are, you think, what, this guy's, but he's entertaining. Now I'm thinking, man, maybe there's something going on.
Well, I mean, look, there's been enough discussion about it that it makes sense they're going to study it or figure it out. Even President Trump said he wants to know about, you know, Area 51 and the secrets of it. It was like a good reason to become president, right? Get all the top secret information, just like with the JFK files. I don't know. I mean, listen, I have an open mind about things. I also enjoy astrology.
Very nice.
What's
One
your
more
sign?
thing is up next.
Pisces.
Ooh.
I've been driving in this California sun. I've been on the road just to get
It's time now for one more thing, Greg.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Time for Greg's